When you understand how attraction truly works, you stop chasing outcomes and begin transforming the inner world that silently shapes your reality. Life does not respond to desperation, force, or wishful thinking. It responds to the state of mind from which you move. What you consistently experience is not a coincidence. It is a reflection of the psychological posture you inhabit every day. Most people believe attraction is about desire. In truth, it is about alignment. Desire without inner coherence creates tension, and tension repels. When the mind is fragmented, wanting one thing while fearing its arrival, life mirrors that conflict through delay, resistance, and disappointment. But when thought, emotion, and self-image move in the same direction, the outer world reorganizes itself around that inner unity. The unconscious plays a far greater role than conscious intention. You may affirm success, love, or abundance, yet if your deeper beliefs are rooted in unworthiness or lack, those hidden convictions dominate. The psyche always obeys what is most deeply believed, not what is most loudly spoken. To think in a way that attracts everything, you must become aware of these inner contradictions and bring them into conscious integration. This way of thinking begins with self-concept. How you perceive yourself determines what you allow, tolerate, and expect. When you see yourself as someone who must struggle, life presents struggle. When you see yourself as someone who is aligned with growth, meaning, and worth, life reflects opportunities that match that identity. The world treats you the way your mind has already decided you deserve to be treated. Detachment is another essential element of attraction. When you cling too tightly to outcomes, you communicate inner lack. When you release obsession and trust the process, you signal inner sufficiency. This does not mean passivity. It means acting from fullness rather than need. Paradoxically, what you stop grasping for often arrives more easily because your inner state is no longer blocking it. To think in this way is to live symbolically rather than reactively. Every challenge becomes a message, every delay a lesson, every desire a clue pointing toward inner development. As you refine your inner dialogue, resolve hidden conflicts, and act from a grounded sense of self, attraction becomes effortless. You no longer chase life. Life moves toward you. Because your inner world has become a place it can reflect with harmony, attraction does not originate from what the mind wants, but from what the psyche is aligned with. Surface-level desire is often loud, impatient, and emotionally charged, yet it lacks the power to shape reality on its own. Desire can announce what the ego wants to possess, but alignment reveals what the inner world is prepared to receive. When these two are not in harmony, attraction fails, not because the desire is wrong, but because the inner structure is divided. Most people desire things that contradict their self-image. They want love while unconsciously identifying as unlovable, success while secretly fearing responsibility, abundance while carrying deep beliefs about scarcity. These contradictions operate beneath awareness, quietly shaping outcomes. The psyche always follows the deepest pattern, not the conscious wish. When desire is not supported by inner alignment, it creates psychological tension, and that tension communicates resistance rather than openness to life. Inner alignment means that thoughts, emotions, beliefs, and identity are oriented in the same direction. It is a state of inner agreement. When a person is aligned, there is no internal argument about whether something is deserved, safe, or possible. This coherence produces a calm certainty that does not need to be proven. Life responds to this certainty because it is stable, grounded, and free of inner conflict. Attraction flows naturally from this state because nothing within is working against. Hence, the outcome, surface-level desire, by contrast, is often rooted in lack. It arises from comparison, insecurity, or the need to fill an inner emptiness. When desire is fueled by deficiency, it reinforces the very absence it seeks to escape. The mind becomes fixated on what is missing, and this fixation shapes perception, behavior, and emotional responses. Opportunities may appear, but they are overlooked, sabotaged, or rejected because they do not match the underlying self-concept. Alignment begins with awareness. When you observe your reactions, patterns, and recurring obstacles, you begin to see the hidden beliefs directing your life. These beliefs are not mistakes, they are adaptations formed through experience. However, what once protected you may now limit you. True attraction requires integrating these unconscious elements rather than denying them. When inner resistance is acknowledged and resolved, energy that was once blocked becomes available for growth and creation. This way of thinking shifts focus from chasing outcomes to refining inner states. Instead of asking, how do I get what I want? The aligned mind asks, who must I become to naturally embody this reality? As identity evolves, behavior changes effortlessly, choices become clearer, boundaries stronger, and actions more decisive. Attraction then becomes a byproduct of inner order rather than an external pursuit. When inner alignment is present, effort feels purposeful rather than forced. There is a sense of right timing, intuitive movement, and quiet confidence. Life responds not to desperation but to clarity, not to wishing but to being. In this state, attraction is no longer something you try to control. It is something that unfolds as a reflection of inner coherence. The unconscious mind operates as the silent architect of human experience, shaping outcomes long before conscious intention has a chance to intervene. While conscious thought believes itself to be in control, it is often only responding to decisions already made at a deeper level. What appears as choice, motivation, or intention is frequently the surface expression of unconscious patterns formed through past experiences, emotional conditioning, and unresolved internal conflicts. Conscious intention is limited by what the mind can articulate, but the unconscious governs what the psyche accepts as real, safe, and possible. A person may intend success, stability, or love, yet repeatedly encounter failure or loss. This is not the result of poor effort, but of unconscious expectations that contradict conscious goals. The psyche seeks consistency, and when conscious intention clashes with unconscious belief, the unconscious always prevails because it directs perception, emotional response, and behavior automatically. Much of the unconscious is shaped in early life, when the mind absorbs meaning without critical evaluation. Emotional experiences become internal truths, not as ideas but as felt realities. If rejection, instability, or scarcity were once present, the unconscious may normalize these states. Later in life, even when the conscious mind desires something different, the unconscious continues to recreate familiar emotional environments. It does so not to sabotage, but to preserve psychological coherence and familiarity. Outcomes are shaped not by what one thinks occasionally, but by what one believes consistently. The unconscious mind expresses itself through habits, tone of voice, body language, intuition, and the subtle choices made without awareness. These elements influence how others respond, which opportunities feel accessible, and which paths feel threatening. As a result, life circumstances often mirror unconscious assumptions rather than deliberate plans. Attempts to change life through sheer willpower often fail because they address only the conscious layer. Affirmations, goals, and positive thinking can momentarily inspire, but without unconscious integration, they create inner friction. The psyche senses the discrepancy between what is being declared and what is deeply believed. This friction manifests as procrastination, self-doubt, anxiety, or sudden loss of motivation. The unconscious resists what it does not recognize as aligned with the self. Transformation begins when attention shifts inward, toward observing patterns rather than forcing outcomes. Repeated emotional reactions, recurring relationship dynamics, and persistent obstacles are not random events. They are expressions of unconscious content seeking recognition. When these patterns are brought into awareness, they lose their compulsive power. Integration does not require erasing the past, but understanding how it continues to shape the present. As the unconscious becomes more aligned with conscious intention, behavior changes organically. Actions feel natural instead of forced. Confidence emerges without performance, and choices reflect inner clarity. Outcomes begin to shift, not because reality has been controlled, but because the inner structure generating experience has been reorganized. In this way, the unconscious does not oppose conscious intention. It fulfills it once both speak the same psychological language. Self-concept is the inner framework through which you interpret yourself and the world, and it quietly governs what you attract and what you permit to remain in your life. It is not merely how you describe yourself in words, but how you experience yourself emotionally and psychologically. Every interaction, opportunity, and limitation passes through this internal filter. What aligns with your self-concept feels familiar and acceptable, while what contradicts it often feels uncomfortable, unrealistic, or undeserved. People do not attract what they want. They attract what matches their identity. If someone unconsciously sees themselves as overlooked or undervalued, they may desire recognition yet repeatedly find themselves in situations where their efforts go unnoticed. This is not because the world is unfair, but because the self-concept silently shapes expectations, behavior, and tolerance. The psyche gravitates toward experiences that confirm its existing narrative, even when that narrative causes suffering. Self-concept determines boundaries, often without conscious awareness. What you allow others to say, how they treat you, and how much you give in relationships are all guided by what you believe you are worthy of. When self-concept is rooted in lack or insecurity, unhealthy dynamics feel normal. When it is rooted in self-respect, the same dynamics feel intolerable. In this way, attraction is not just about what enters your life, but what you allow to stay. Opportunities function in the same manner. A person may encounter chances for growth, success, or expansion, yet unconsciously reject them. If the opportunity demands a level of responsibility, visibility, or confidence that conflicts with their self-image, the mind will rationalize avoidance. Fear, doubt, or procrastination are not flaws of character, but protective responses designed to maintain consistency with the self-concept. The psyche resists anything that threatens its sense of identity, even if that identity is limiting. As self-concept evolves, perception changes. You begin to notice different possibilities, respond differently to challenges, and interpret events through a new lens. Situations that once felt intimidating now feel manageable. Treatment from others subtly shifts, not because people are consciously changing, but because your posture, communication, and emotional presence have changed. The world responds to what you unconsciously project about yourself. True change does not begin with forcing new behaviors, but with revising the inner image from which behavior emerges. When you internally recognize yourself as capable, deserving, and grounded, actions naturally follow that recognition. You speak differently, choose differently, and walk away from what no longer aligns. Attraction becomes effortless because you are no longer negotiating with your worth. What you attract is not random, and what you allow is not accidental. Both are reflections of the relationship you have with yourself. As that relationship becomes clearer and more integrated, life mirrors it with greater harmony, respect, and alignment. Inner conflict arises when different parts of the psyche want opposing outcomes, creating a state of psychological friction that quietly governs behavior and experience. On the surface, a person may feel motivated and clear about their goals, yet beneath that clarity lies hesitation, doubt, or fear pulling in the opposite direction. This division consumes energy and creates resistance, not only internally but in the way life responds. The mind becomes scattered, actions lose coherence, and progress feels heavy and strained. Resistance is not an external force working against you, it is the internal signal of misalignment. When one part of the self seeks expansion, while another part seeks safety, the psyche locks itself into a stalemate. Effort increases, but effectiveness decreases. Decisions feel draining, momentum is inconsistent, and outcomes rarely match intentions. This is because energy is being spent managing inner opposition, rather than moving forward with unified purpose. Inner conflict often originates from unresolved emotional experiences. Protective patterns formed in the past continue to operate long after their usefulness has expired. Fear of rejection may clash with the desire for connection, or the need for control may oppose the desire for freedom. These conflicts are rarely conscious, yet they shape perception and behavior automatically. The psyche attempts to satisfy all sides at once, resulting in compromise that satisfies none. When inner conflict dominates, even opportunities can feel threatening. Success may trigger anxiety, intimacy may provoke withdrawal, and change may feel unsafe. The mind rationalizes hesitation, masking fear as logic. Procrastination, self-sabotage, and chronic indecision are not moral failures, but expressions of internal disagreement. The psyche is attempting to protect itself from perceived danger while also pursuing growth, and the result is resistance. Inner unity, by contrast, emerges when opposing parts are brought into awareness and integrated rather than suppressed. Integration does not require eliminating fear or doubt. It requires understanding their purpose and aligning them with conscious intention. When the protective and aspirational aspects of the psyche work together, energy that was once blocked becomes available. Action feels natural instead of forced, and clarity replaces confusion. Flow is the external expression of this inner unity. In flow, decisions arise intuitively, effort feels purposeful, and timing appears effortless. There is a sense of cooperation between thought, emotion, and action. Life responds more smoothly because there is no internal signal of contradiction. The psyche is no longer sending mixed messages to itself or to the world. As inner unity stabilizes, trust in oneself deepens. Choices are made with confidence, boundaries are upheld without guilt, and setbacks are met with adaptability rather than collapse. Resistance fades not because challenges disappear, but because the inner structure is coherent enough to meet them. In this state, progress is no longer a struggle. It becomes a natural movement, guided by an integrated and aligned inner world. Detachment is often misunderstood as indifference or emotional withdrawal. Yet, in its true psychological sense, it is a signal of inner abundance. It reflects a state in which the self is no longer dependent on a specific outcome to feel whole, safe, or validated. When attachment dominates, desire is charged with anxiety and urgency. The mind fixates on results, and this fixation reveals an inner belief that fulfillment exists outside the self. Life responds not to the desire itself, but to the underlying sense of lack embedded within it. Attachment creates tension because it places identity at the mercy of external conditions. When happiness, worth, or security are tied to outcomes, the psyche enters a state of vigilance. Every delay feels like rejection, every obstacle like failure. This emotional strain subtly shapes behavior, communication, and decision making. Actions become reactive rather than intentional, and intuition is overridden by fear. In this state, the mind interferes with natural processes, trying to force results before the inner structure is ready to receive them. Detachment, by contrast, communicates trust. It signals that the self is grounded enough to allow events to unfold without constant control. This does not mean inaction, it means engagement without desperation. When the psyche is detached, it is no longer signaling scarcity. The unconscious message shifts from, I need this to be okay, to, I am okay and I am open. This inner posture creates psychological openness, which allows opportunities to be recognized and responded to with clarity. Manifestation accelerates under detachment because resistance dissolves. Much of what delays outcomes is not external opposition, but internal interference. Overthinking, emotional volatility, and compulsive effort disrupt timing and perception. Detachment quiets these disturbances. The mind becomes more receptive, less rigid, and more attuned to subtle cues. Decisions feel cleaner, actions more aligned, and responses more adaptive. Inner abundance does not arise from having everything, but from no longer being defined by what is missing. When the self is internally resourced, desire becomes lighter and more focused. Goals are pursued with curiosity rather than fear, and setbacks are integrated rather than dramatized. This emotional stability creates consistency, and consistency strengthens momentum. Life responds more fluidly to a psyche that is not constantly oscillating between hope and despair. Paradoxically, what is released often moves closer. When attachment loosens, the unconscious no longer associates the desire with threat or urgency. This allows behavior to align naturally with intention. Communication improves, confidence stabilizes, and relationships shift. Others sense this grounded presence and respond without resistance. The external world reflects the internal state of ease. Detachment is not the absence of desire, but the absence of inner grasping. It is the quiet certainty that fulfillment does not depend on immediate outcomes. From this state, manifestation becomes less about effort and more about alignment. What unfolds does so with greater speed and harmony, not because it is forced, but because nothing within is blocking its arrival. Life does not respond to what you hope for in moments of longing. It responds to the psychological state you consistently inhabit. Wishes are fleeting mental events, often formed in contrast to what is missing, while psychological states are enduring patterns of perception, emotion, and expectation. These patterns operate continuously, shaping how you interpret events, how you act, and what you unconsciously invite into your experience. The outer world mirrors this inner climate with remarkable accuracy. A psychological state is the sum of your self-concept, emotional regulation, beliefs, and habitual reactions. If your inner world is dominated by fear, mistrust, or inadequacy, life tends to present situations that confirm these feelings. This is not punishment or fate, but resonance. The psyche seeks coherence between inner experience and outer reality. What feels familiar internally becomes what feels normal externally. Even when it is uncomfortable or limiting, wishing often carries an implicit admission of lack. When you wish for something, you are emphasizing its absence, reinforcing the identity of someone who does not have. This inner stance subtly influences behavior. You may hesitate to take opportunities seriously, doubt positive developments, or unconsciously undermine progress. The psyche is not aligned with receiving, it is aligned with waiting. Life reflects this by offering delays, partial results, or repeated frustrations. Psychological states influence micro-behaviors that compound over time. Tone of voice, body language, emotional availability, and decision-making are all shaped by inner conditions. These signals affect how others respond to you and which paths remain open or closed. A person grounded in self-trust tends to invite cooperation and respect, while someone governed by insecurity often encounters resistance or neglect. The world responds less to declared intentions and more to the unspoken language of inner certainty or doubt. Change becomes possible when attention shifts from wishing to embodying. When you cultivate calm, clarity, and self-responsibility, your responses to life change. Challenges are met with adaptability rather than collapse, and uncertainty is approached with curiosity instead of fear. These shifts alter the trajectory of experience. The same external circumstances produce different outcomes because the inner interpreter has changed. Life also reflects unresolved inner conflicts. Patterns of repeated disappointment, strained relationships, or stalled growth are often expressions of internal division seeking resolution. Until these psychological tensions are addressed, wishing for different results has little effect. The psyche continues to project its unresolved content outward, recreating situations that demand awareness and integration. When the psychological state evolves, the reflection changes naturally. Opportunities that once felt inaccessible appear attainable. Relationships recalibrate and environments shift. This is not because life has suddenly become generous, but because the inner posture has changed. Life responds to who you are being, not to what you are asking for. When your psychological state aligns with clarity, worth, and inner stability, the world mirrors that alignment with greater harmony and responsiveness. In the end, attraction is not something you force, chase, or demand from life. It is something you allow by becoming inwardly aligned, psychologically integrated, and emotionally grounded. When your unconscious beliefs support your intentions, when your self-concept reflects worth and clarity, when inner conflict is resolved into unity, and when detachment replaces desperation, life has no resistance to mirror back to you. The world responds naturally to the state you embody. Change the inner atmosphere, and the outer landscape reorganizes itself without struggle. When you no longer wish from lack but live from inner coherence, attraction becomes effortless because life is finally responding to who you are, not what you want.